why in the middle of this crisis have the Liberal Party powers put themselves ahead of Canadians. They're in the middle of a Liberal Party power struggle. Again, concerned about themselves, their own self-interest, rather than immediately recalling Parliament so that we can pass a Canada First plan.
Opposition leaders want the urgent return of Parliament, arguing the House of Commons should be debating Canada's response to the Trump administration. But the House is currently prorogued until the end of March, after the election of the next Liberal leader, who will become Justin Trudeau's replacement, both at the helm of the party and as Prime Minister. Here's frontrunners Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney on Canada's response so far.
The Prime Minister has been great, and I have to tell you, the whole country is rallying behind him. We all feel personally hurt, and that hurt is now becoming anger.
Would you recall Parliament if you win in order to handle this?
Well, look, don't make a decision before you have to, progress is being made. You will have, of course, and I will watch on CTV to get the outcome of the Prime Minister's call with the President, and we'll see what progress is made both in that and then in subsequent, and then decision will be made.
Let's bring back the front bench to talk about Trump's impact on domestic politics. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie are back. Lisa, I'll start with you. First, on the question of prorogation, what's your take on that?
We're prorogued for one reason only. It's so that the Liberals can find themselves a new leader. That's it. The only reason why. We're supposed to be sitting right now. We're not sitting right now. I'm not saying we. The Parliament should be sitting right now. The House should be sitting. Senate should be sitting. Work should be done. Committees should be meeting. People should be talking about this matter from across the country in the place that it makes sense for it to be talked about. I can't tell you how annoying it is for me that there's all kinds of Liberal candidates down on the airwaves in the United States talking about this, as opposed to people talking about this and the impacts of it here in Canada. And if I hear one more time that, well, it's unfair, you know, if they try to take the government down while they're looking for their leader, I really don't care anymore, Vassy. I'm back to I don't care anymore. Quite frankly, we need to make sure that people are hearing what's going on from all 338 parts of the country that are represented in the House of Parliament, and they're not. They're getting it through a prism of people trying to be the next Prime Minister. That's wrong. That's not the message or the narrative we need to have right now. And quite frankly, they're all getting paid, and they should all get their butts back to Ottawa.
Benzie, it's not just the Conservatives saying that Parliament should come back. It's also the NDP who say, like, for example, if there needs to be some sort of stimulus or massive package for workers who are laid off, should these tariffs be applied, that Parliament should reconvene essentially to move that through as legislation. Lisa pointed out the Liberals are saying in some circles, having an election right away, since the opposition parties have promised at the earliest opportunity to topple the government, wouldn't be, the right, quote unquote, right thing to do at this moment. And the other argument they're putting forward is, and Minister LeBlanc said it here on Sunday, we don't need Parliament for anything that we need to do. We can increase liquidity, for example. We can put in supports through EI. We have the ability to do what we need to do without Parliament being in session. How does that all play out in your mind?
Well, I mean, the Conservatives were pointing out to me before I came on the air, Vassy, with you, that their own documents yesterday about this, this détente with President Trump make the point that they do need the Commons to be back in session so that they can pass some legislative changes to strengthen the border, as President Trump and Premier Smith really want. But I'm surprised at how we're kind of letting this vacuum. Canadians are letting this vacuum continue. March 4th, I think, is when Trump's latest reprieve ends. That's still 5 days before the new Liberal leader is chosen on March 9th, and then the House doesn't come back until March 24th, right? So 3 weeks after that. So that's a whole lot of limbo. And even someone like Mark Carney, who loves to dance around reporters' questions and Canadian journalists, That's a lot of dancing for him, presuming he wins, or Christian Freeland there on Morning Joe on MSNBC. And does leave your head. I do have to scratch my head, Vassy. I got to tell you, I don't know. It's like this is playing out in another world. It's just bizarre.
Tom, what's your take on the sort of, differing arguments? One, there needs to be the business of the House versus an election right now would be even more destabilizing.
I agree with that last statement. I mean, if all this is about avoiding instability and that sort of difficulty for Canadians, then for heaven's sakes, let's get past this phase that we're in now. It will bring us to March. The only part on which I disagree slightly, I don't think it's a given that Parliament is coming back at the end of March. I think we might hop, skip, and a jump straight into an election. And with regard to the opposition parties saying, oh, no, well, we promise this time we won't pull the football back and land you on your back. We'll come in and we'll be constructive. Well, after the 4 months that we just went through this fall, with the absolute shutdown of Parliament by the Conservatives, with the NDP boasting 22 times in one press conference that they were going to tear up the deal that the Liberals had rigorously respected between the two of them, I can understand anybody in the government right now saying, well, first of all, we need a new leader. And second of all, we're not going to trust them because, frankly, I think you'd have to be passing naive to believe that Poilievre would go into the House and somehow play a positive role where he hasn't done that in months and months. So it's a lousy situation for us to be in. The Americans are definitely taking advantage of the fact that we've left ourselves in this limbo. We can blame the Liberals until the cows come home, but until we get past the next step, which is to have a new prime minister to replace Trudeau, and that will be on March 9th. We'll know who that will be, and then we'll see how long it will be. Will there be a throne speech, or will we go straight to an election? My betting right now is that we're heading straight to an election. I don't see any reason why the Liberals would want to drag this thing on. Let their new person, whoever it turns out to be, go straight to an election and test it with the voting public.
Your co-panelists look really enthused at that possibility. Brian, I would say, just to be fair, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre isn't saying, let's go because I want to, work constructively. On principle, I think they're arguing that Parliament be in session, but they're still also saying that, an election would kind of give the government a mandate one way or the other that is clearer than the one that exists at the present moment. It's NDP leader Jagmeet Singh who says, well, I'm willing to, and this is not explicitly, but he's intimated that, I'm willing to postpone my, guaranteed bringing down of this government if it is to work constructively, if workers need something basically in the interim.
Yeah, so I'm going to maybe kind of launch off with what Tom just said. So this is a lousy situation, and I think the right move would have been for maybe after the Toronto by-election that Benji and Tom started predicting that Trudeau would resign, that he would have resigned then, and the leadership would have been somewheres in the fall before the election or not too far after the U.S. election. So that would be the ideal situation, but we're just not in that, and we have to now deal with what we have. The idea of getting a mandate, I mean, look, we have a crisis, and we have a few weeks that we absolutely need to be doing everything that we can to mitigate and to ensure that this reprieve of the terrorists becomes permanent. If we go into Parliament tomorrow and there's an election that's launched because Jagmeet Singh and Poilievre decide, no, we're going to go with what we had originally said, then we're not going to have that. It's going to be more disarray. We're not going to have somebody that can deal with the Trump administration over the next month. So having a mandate for that period, that argument just doesn't really work, I think. Afterwards, though, I think absolutely, and I tend to agree with Tom, not only would they maybe want to, the next leader of the Liberal Party may want to go into election, they may have to. I mean, they may have to just jump right into it based on what's happening with the U.S. I would say everything what I just mentioned, though, I would say that if we need to pass something, if Canada needs to pass something, either as one of the concessions in the negotiating table or something in response, then yeah, right, Parliament will have to be called. But even in that scenario, we're talking about a few weeks at this point when the next Liberal leader will be chosen and the next Prime Minister. And having a campaign where the two major parties have leaders, I think, is also good for our democracy.
Okay, I got to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I appreciate the discussion. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzia, our front bench.